The Billionaire Who Cancelled Christmas Part 5. Chapter 10, The Almost Kiss in the Firelight. Dinner lasted forever. Not literally, of course, but for Harper, sitting alone in the lounge, pretending to scroll through photos while listening to the faint echoes of polished laughter drifting from the dining room, time stretched out like gum on a hot sidewalk. She could imagine it all too easily. Rosalind orchestrating conversation like a maestro. Clarissa dazzling the room with strategic charm. Grayson sitting stiffly, politely trapped in a tradition he clearly didn't want, but wouldn't outright refuse. Harper shouldn't care. She really shouldn't. She was a photographer. A stranded guest. A background presence in a world that wasn't hers. But that didn't stop the tiny sting in her chest when she thought about Clarissa leaning close to him, laughing at things he didn't intend as jokes, placing her perfectly manicured hand near his on the table. Harper pressed her forehead against her folded arms on the couch, exhaling deeply. "Don't be ridiculous," she whispered to herself. "He barely tolerates you. You're not." Her pep talk dissolved when the dining room door opened. Footsteps. Slow, even, heavy in the quiet hallway. She straightened just as Grayson entered the lounge. His suit jacket was off. His sleeves were rolled up. The top button of his shirt undone, a rare sign of dented composure for a man who valued order the way other people valued oxygen. Harper sat up quickly. "Oh, hey. Sorry. I didn't expect you so soon. Or at all. I mean." He lifted a hand gently, stopping her rambling. "It's fine." But he didn't sound fine. He sounded tired. Like the emotional version of someone who had walked through deep snow for hours. He paused near the fire, absorbing its warmth, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. Harper hesitated before speaking softly. "Dinner, rough." A low sound escaped him, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. Somewhere in between. "You could say that." She nodded, offering a faint, empathetic smile. "I didn't mean to overhear earlier, about the introduction. The matchmaking thing. But I did. And I'm sorry." "That sounds like a lot of pressure." Grayson's eyes flicked to her with brief surprise, then softened, barely, but undeniably. "It's fine," he said quietly. "My mother doesn't mean harm. She simply believes legacy should be curated." Harper tilted her head. "Like a museum exhibit." He gave a humorless half-smile. "Precisely." She scooted to the far end of the couch, leaving space but keeping him in her line of sight. So she ventured gently, "Did it go how she planned?" Clarissa seemed prepared. Grayson tensed, looking away toward the fire. "She always is," he murmured. "Her family and mine have known each other for years. There are certain expectations." "Expectations," Harper repeated softly. "That sounds heavy." "You could say that." He ran a hand through his hair, a restrained, rare sign of actual frustration. Harper watched him carefully, noticing how the firelight painted gold across his face. Without the suit jacket, without the practiced exterior, he looked younger. Not in age, but in vulnerability. She swallowed lightly. "Did you enjoy dinner?" she asked. "No." The answer was blunt enough to make Harper blink. "She talked," he said quietly. "A lot." Harper smiled faintly. "That didn't surprise me." A pause. Then, unexpectedly, Grayson turned toward her fully. "And I kept thinking about." He stopped himself. Harper felt her pulse nudge at her neck. Thinking about what? He didn't answer immediately. He looked at her instead. Really looked. Her hair falling loosely over her shoulders. Her sweater sleeves pushed to her elbows. Her warm, attentive eyes reflecting the fire. And something in him shifted. The silence between them grew charged, not hostile like before, but something else entirely. Something delicate. Something dangerous. "Miss Meadows," he said softly, "this is complicated." The way he said her name made her breath catch. "You can call me Harper," she whispered. He inhaled slowly, as though the simple offer was more intimate than it should have been. Harper. Her name in his voice felt different. Warm. Careful. Like he was letting it settle on his tongue for the first time. She swallowed. Complicated how? His gaze drifted briefly to the shadows, then back to her. "I don't," he began. "I'm not accustomed to." He stopped again, the words tangling. Harper stepped closer, just a little. "You don't have to force anything. Or explain everything. We can just sit. If you want." A small, conflicted smile tugged at his mouth. "You're very persistent," he murmured. "I prefer the term encouraging." He actually huffed a soft laugh, barely audible but real. The fire crackled. The snow pressed against the windows. Grayson took a slow step toward the couch. Then another. When he sat beside her, the space between them shrank, not touching, but close enough for Harper to feel the heat radiating from him. Close enough to sense the shift in his breathing. Close enough for something to happen if either of them leaned an inch. Harper's heartbeat thudded against her ribs. So she whispered, "Can I ask you something?" He nodded, eyes fixed on her lips for a second too long before flicking back up. "Why do you try so hard to be?" She hesitated, choosing the softest phrasing she could. "Untouchable." His breath stilled. The question landed deeper than she intended, but it didn't make him shut down. Not this time. He exhaled slowly. "Because," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "every year I tell myself December will be easier if I feel nothing. If I avoid anything that might pull me into old memories. If I don't." He swallowed. "If I don't let anything in." Harper's chest tightened. And then he continued again, softer, "You got here." She blinked. "Me?" He nodded once. "And I haven't been able to do any of those things." The words wrapped around them like threads drawing tighter. Her breath hitched. Grayson's gaze lowered to her mouth again, unmistakably now. The space between them collapsed 2 inches. She felt the warmth of him. The slow rise of his chest. The unspoken question hanging in the air. He leaned in, slowly, hesitantly, like he wasn't sure this was allowed, like he wasn't sure he deserved it, like he was terrified and drawn at the same time. Harper's heart pounded. She tilted toward him. Their noses brushed, a soft, electric touch. Their lips hovered, so close she could feel his breath. And then, he froze. Not because of noise. Not because of interruption. Because of fear. He pulled back abruptly, blinking hard as though steadying himself on the edge of something far too vulnerable. "I can't," he whispered, voice rough. "Not like this. Not right now." Harper felt the sting immediately, blooming hot and sharp beneath her ribs. But she managed a soft, steady nod. "Okay," she whispered. "I get it." He stood slowly, distancing himself with several hesitant steps. He didn't look angry. He looked afraid. Afraid of wanting something. Afraid of breaking a rule he'd built around himself. Afraid of how close he had come to shattering that distance. "I shouldn't have," he began. "You didn't do anything wrong," Harper said gently. "Neither of us did." He looked at her then, not cold, not guarded, but painfully conflicted. The firelight flickered across his features, turning the moment into something raw and unshielded. "I need," he said quietly, "a little time." She nodded again. "Take it." He hesitated, then turned and walked out of the lounge, disappearing down the hallway with footsteps that echoed like unresolved feelings. Harper sat there long after he left, her heart still thrumming with the almost moment that had hovered between them like a held breath. They didn't kiss. But they almost did. And in some twisted way. That felt even more dangerous. Even more intimate. Even more irreversible. Chapter 11, The Misunderstanding of the Century. Harper didn't sleep well. Not because the storm howled against the windows, or because the resort creaked like an old mansion auditioning for a ghost movie, or because she'd overindulged in hot chocolate, though that might have contributed. No, sleep avoided her for one reason. The almost kiss. The almost that felt like a spark someone had quickly snuffed out with trembling hands. She replayed it over and over, the warmth in Grayson's eyes, the closeness of his breath, the exact millisecond when fear overtook him and he pulled away like the moment burned. By sunrise, she felt wrung out, embarrassed, and confused. She opened her curtains and found the world still drowning in snow, skies heavy with clouds that refused to move. The resort was silent, the kind of quiet that amplified thoughts instead of silencing them. He regrets it, Harper told herself. He probably filed the entire moment under disruptive emotional events. She dragged herself out of bed, ran a brush through her hair, and forced a smile at her reflection. "New day," she whispered. "Less awkwardness. Please." She slipped on her boots, slung her camera over her shoulder, and ventured down the hallway toward the main lounge, hoping to grab a quiet breakfast before running into. "Oh," a staff member gasped as she rounded the corner. "Harper. Did you see it?" "See what?" Harper blinked. The staffer leaned closer, wide-eyed. "It's all over the social feeds." Her stomach tightened. "What is?" The staffer pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward Harper. Harper stared. It was a photo. A professionally lit photo, Clarissa Montague, perfectly posed beside Grayson. He wasn't smiling, exactly, but the tilt of his head, the formal positioning, the lighting. It looked like a promotional announcement. The caption. "A beautiful night with the ever-charming Grayson Hale, champagne glasses sparkles. Blessed to spend time with this incredible man. # future plans # holiday magic." Harper's heart dropped. Hard. Not like disappointment. Not like jealousy. Something deeper. Something that felt embarrassingly personal for someone who was, technically, a stranger to him. She forced her voice into casualness, but it cracked. "Oh. Well. That's new." The staffer winced sympathetically. "You okay?" Yes, Harper lied instantly. No universe believed her. She handed back the phone, trying to keep her hands steady. Inside, embarrassment bloomed like fire under her skin. A misunderstanding, logical, obvious, but painfully large, crashed through her. Of course a man like Grayson belonged with someone like Clarissa. Of course his mother orchestrated it. Of course Harper had read too much into a moment he probably regretted the second it happened. She inhaled sharply. "Thank you for showing me," she murmured, then headed down the hallway before the staff member could ask anything else. Grayson Hale stood at the reception desk, reviewing reports with Daniel. His suit jacket was draped over a nearby chair, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. He hadn't slept much either. Last night had replayed for him too. Harper's breath. Her closeness. The gentleness in her voice. The moment he almost closed the distance between them. He hadn't planned it. He hadn't wanted it. And yet. He rubbed the back of his neck, blaming the tension in his shoulders on stress rather than something far more unsettling. Daniel hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable. "So, sir," he began delicately. "I thought you might want to know something before the staff mentions it." Grayson gave him a wary glance. "Daniel, I'm not in the mood to decode ominous hints." Daniel swallowed. Clarissa posted a photo. With implications. Grayson frowned. What kind of implications? Daniel hesitated, then lifted his tablet. Grayson's eyes locked on the picture. Clarissa leaning into him. The caption. The hashtags. His jaw flexed. "This didn't happen," he said coldly. "The photo did," Daniel whispered. "The sentiment did not." Grayson's pulse ticked once, sharply. He'd asked Clarissa politely for distance at the end of dinner. She'd ignored it. He set the tablet down a little too firmly. "Get that taken down." "We've reached out to her team," Daniel said carefully. "But, sir, people already saw it." Grayson exhaled slowly, irritation radiating through every muscle. The last thing he wanted was speculation, attention, or the false narrative that he was entering some strategic alliance romance his mother would celebrate with champagne. Worse. He had a sudden, irrational concern about how Harper might perceive it. Which he shouldn't care about. Absolutely should not. And yet. He straightened abruptly. "Has Miss Meadows been down yet?" "I believe she saw the photo," Daniel said gently. "She passed through the east wing looking upset." Something punched the space under Grayson's ribs. Upset? Upset why? There was no reason for her to be. He stopped himself. Of course there was. He'd almost kissed her. He'd walked away. And now social media was announcing his almost engagement to someone else. Wonderful, he thought bitterly. The universe has a sense of humor after all. "Where is she now?" he asked, voice tight. Daniel pointed down the hall. "She headed toward the guest rooms." Grayson didn't wait another second. He started walking briskly, determination cutting through the exhaustion and frustration. He needed to explain. He needed to clarify. He needed to. He didn't finish the thought, because when he turned the corner toward Harper's wing, she was already there. Standing at her door. Shoulders slightly hunched. Hands trembling as they fumbled with the key card. And her suitcase was open on the floor beside her. She was packing. Grayson stopped mid-stride. "Harper," he said, breath uneven. She didn't turn around. She shoved another sweater into her suitcase. "Harper," he repeated, louder this time. She froze. Then she looked over her shoulder, face composed. eyes glossy with the sheen of someone trying very hard not to show hurt. "Oh," she said lightly, too lightly. "Hi." Her tone made the back of Grayson's neck prickle. "Why are you packing?" he asked. "Because," she said, closing her suitcase with a quiet snap, "I shouldn't have stayed this long. And I definitely shouldn't have gotten in the way of your—" She hesitated. "Your plans." He blinked. "My what?" She gestured vaguely. "Your future match. Your gala introduction. Your—" Her hands flapped helplessly for a moment before she let them fall. "That post," she finished quietly. "It makes things pretty clear." Grayson's chest tightened. "That post is misleading," he said sharply. "Completely untrue." Harper looked away. "Maybe so. But it still makes me look incredibly stupid for—" She cut herself off. "For what?" "For almost kissing him. For wanting something impossible in a world she didn't belong in." Grayson stepped closer. "Harper," he said, softer now, "don't leave." She swallowed. "I shouldn't be here." "You're stranded," he countered. "This isn't voluntary." "That's not what I mean," she whispered. The words hung between them, fragile, painful, dangerously honest. He took another step toward her, something raw flickering in his expression. But Harper shook her head, forcing a small, brittle smile. "Look, it's fine. Really. Let's just pretend last night never happened. And this morning doesn't matter. And I'll get out of your hair the second the road's clear." Grayson's hand curled into a fist at his side. She thought he regretted it. She thought she was an inconvenience. She thought she'd made a fool of herself. And the worst part? He'd caused it, by pulling away, by hesitating, by allowing Clarissa's photo to fill the silence he'd left. "Harper," he said, trying again, "just listen." But she was already turning back to her suitcase. Already closing the door on the conversation. On him. On the moment that almost was. "I can't," she whispered. "Not right now. I just can't." She stepped inside. She shut the door gently. Not slammed. Just closed. Soft. Final. Grayson stood there in the hallway, breath unsteady, watching the door he suddenly had no idea how to open again. And the storm outside tightened around the mountain like an omen. The misunderstanding of the century had landed. And neither of them knew how much damage it had already done.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and favorite theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and luxurious romance, the next story is always one click away.